Welcome to the Legacy Lounge, Carol. Carol Sherron is a Senior Vice President, a Zone Client Advisory Leader with the Marsh McLennan Agency and Private Client Services. You must do a lot. That's an incredible background and title. Thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
If you don't mind, I'm going to give our audience a little heads up on Marsh McLennan if they're not really familiar with it first. Most people probably remember Marsh as starting in 1905, primarily insuring energy companies and railroads and manufacturers. But you've really expanded services, and somewhere in the 1980s, you added white glove private client services. And you are, or at least Marsh, is the number one operating insurance and brokerage firm in the world. I don't know if everybody knows that, and I think it's obviously quite impressive with, as a large company, over $25 billion in revenue, about $5 billion in year revenue alone. So I imagine you're very busy. And can you tell me, in your leadership role and as it relates to private client services, what was the inspiration for starting that division, and where are you today?
Oh, sure. So we started our private client services division in 1980, and the purpose of it at that time and remains to address the unique needs of affluent clients. We have advised some of the world's most successful families and individuals, and that remains a passion for us. I will share with you, we're super proud. We have been awarded the Best High Net Worth Broker Award from Private Asset Management for 2 years in a row.
Congratulations.
So we're thrilled about that. And to me, that award really, it just underscores our passion for advising clients.
Carol, I've loved working with the people at Marsh because I tend to see you as a risk advisor on a part of a team. And I think you feel that way too, but can you tell us more about that?
Oh, absolutely. So, we consider ourselves to be part of a team. Just as a client has their own attorney, they have their wealth advisor and other professionals around them, we are a trusted advisor for our clients in the areas of risk management.
Well, your services go way beyond the plane of retail insurance. What were some of the needs are some of the needs you address for affluent clients?
I'll tell you, affluent clients tend to have very unique assets. Many of them have homes, multiple homes, some outside the U.S. They tend to collect things such as art, jewelry, collector cars. And, while you think of those types of collections, they definitely sound very fun, and I'm sure they are, but they also bring a lot of complexity and risk to the owners and to the families. So that's where we come in, very much like these families work with a wealth advisor such as yourself. They work with attorneys and other specialists. We come in as a trusted advisor to talk about and advise and counsel them on personal risk management.
That is such a great explanation because I think of the team members that I work with as risk managers for our clients and done such great job at doing gap analysis for clients. And the discovery is amazing because retail insurers don't address you go way beyond the limits of the traditional insurer. Can you give me an example of that?
Oh, absolutely. So when we work with a client that's new to our firm, we will conduct a very in-depth discovery meeting with them. And the purpose of that is for us to ensure that we're aware of all of the assets and risk that are within that client's portfolio. That gives us the opportunity to advise the client and to construct an insurance program that addresses all of those risks. For our clients that are existing that we already serve, We meet with our clients. Generally, it's once a year. Sometimes it may be more often than that. But we'll meet to talk about not only the insurance program that we have, but we're going to check in to see if there have been changes, if there are plans, future plans out there for additional assets or different kinds of assets. We really work hard to stay on top of that. Our goal is not to issue an insurance policy for every single risk, but it's really to look at it holistically and determine what's the best way, what are the options available, and what do we recommend to our clients to make sure that we've addressed all of the risks in their portfolio.
And it's so important, because I think clients are constantly selling property and don't need to insure that one, and then buying new ones, maybe forgetting to do that unless you do these audits on an annual basis. And a lot of people think that all of their personal artifacts are covered. That if something happened, that their artwork, their jewelry, etc., would kind of be part of it. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, I'd be glad to. So I do think a lot of people think that if they have a homeowner's insurance policy, that takes care of everything in their home and everything in it. And while it certainly does provide coverage for the home and for a lot of the contents, when there are collections or very very valuable assets, and I'll say jewelry, watches, furs, those are common items that have very limited coverages in the homeowner policy. But we have other policies that were built to insure those types of collections. I will say that a lot of people think that's super expensive. It's really not. So
it's a cost-benefit advantage, really,
it is
to have that coverage in place. And
it is. And it's also the policies that we typically issue for those things are worldwide policies. So
interesting.
They cover losses wherever they occur. I can tell you we have seen a number of our clients that are traveling on vacation or out strolling through Central Park and come back to their hotel or to their home and find that they're missing a diamond earring, or they've had some other type of loss.
It's almost always one, isn't it?
It's always one. It's always one. But that's what the insurance is there for.
And so they have to schedule it. And a lot of people don't realize that. And then it's penny wise, pound foolish, really, not to do it. But they don't always get that advice.
That's true. And I will tell you, scheduling items, I always encourage that, because that's where you're going to, create an inventory of the items you want to insure. For valuable items, you want a current appraisal.
And as you add items, you can forget about it if you don't schedule.
That's true.
Have a running schedule.
But for clients that don't want to have to maintain that kind of discipline, I guess I'll call it, we can also do some blanket coverage. So there's usually a limit on how much is paid under a blanket coverage for an item. But for example, if you have jewelry and you have some large pieces, you would probably want to schedule those. But if you've got, a handful of nice bracelets and pieces that you wear, but you don't necessarily think that you want to keep a list or an inventory, we can insure those on a blanket basis. So
That's
you don't
great.
have to list the items, you don't have to establish value. That would be done at the time of a loss if there's a loss to those items. But what I like about that is it gives us the opportunity to really customize a policy for
Some
to
things
meet.
may not need that level of complexity, but if you keep adding and maybe very expensive things that are probably valued at time of the placement of the coverage, you just want to be aware of your risk.
Yes.
Yeah, no, you've done great work for our clients in that regard.
And it's the personality too. I worked with two executives, and one of them was, very, very orderly, kept very neat lists, very neat inventories. The other one did not. And so we covered the one that kept the nice, neat list in the inventory, we tended to schedule more items because that just fit into their lifestyle. The other one, just didn't, that just was not the personality. So we did a lot of blanket coverage so we could make sure that we had some coverage in place, even if there were things that
Right,
we were not
right.
aware of. So,
And, today we are, it used to be that people would have one home generally. It was probably in the United States, and people weren't living as long, and so multi-generational planning was as important. But you're global, and so you can insure things around the world. Are you seeing a lot more of that in your practice with family members?
we do. We do. And we're very fortunate to have offices all over the world. So if we have a client that purchases a home in Italy, or they've got an apartment in Paris and in London, we will communicate and coordinate with our local office to make sure that our clients got the coverage that they need there locally. And if there are parts of that we can incorporate in with the U.S. program, we'll do that. But we work really hard to make sure that we're addressing all of a client's risks, because we don't want any part of a client's asset base to be exposed.
And can you explain a little bit about, particularly high-value real estate, the difference between just buying coverage at a specified amount versus replacement value? Because I think people like to keep premiums low, but they don't always understand the consequences.
So when we talk about replacement cost on a homeowner's policy, what we're talking about, first of all, is the cost to rebuild the home. That may or may not be the same as the market value, the real estate value. It's the cost to come in using the same quality of materials and workmanship to rebuild the home. The policies that we issue, many of them will have replacement cost coverage built in, so that if the amount of coverage that we've established in the beginning for the policy is not enough to rebuild the home at the actual time of a loss, the policy will pay more than that. In some states, there's not a cap on that. In other areas, there may be. But I think it's really important when you're looking at homeowners insurance to look at more than one option and consider things like the territory. So most of the policies that we issue provide worldwide liability for our clients. So if they're traveling abroad, they have personal liability that follows them, just as they would here in the U.S. Not every company provides worldwide coverage. A lot of those policies, especially kind of the standard policies out on the street, may just cover liability within the U.S. So I think that it's important to work with someone who can give you that advice and talk through those kinds of details, because they matter.
Yeah, another detail that I think people tend to overlook when they have high value assets like real estate, certain properties, but even more specifically, yachts, jets, and not everyone has those needs, of course, but when they do, titling of those assets also becomes very important, because it might be in their personal name, but they might have created certain entities, trusts, etc. And how important is it that the titling on the policy match what's happening in the real world?
It's very important, and that's true whether it's an aircraft, whether it's a yacht, whether it's a home, or even automobiles. If there is an entity that was created, a lot of times we see trust or LLCs that were created as part of an estate plan, and if those entities have an ownership interest, they need to be included on the policies. That's something that we talk
Thank you,
about.
Carol. I
We talk
wanted
about
our
that in
audience-
discovery, and we talk about that every year, because
You're
it's that
good
important.
with it. Yeah, and that's another reason why annual reviews are so important. When it comes to artwork, I learned that there are some really unique transit and storage considerations with these assets. Tell us more.
So, for our clients that own valuable artwork, if they're going to be moving the artwork, putting into storage, we typically recommend that they use an experienced vendor who is familiar with and knows how to handle those types of pieces. If the client doesn't have a relationship with a vendor, we can provide them with some resources. We work with some advisory resources, which are companies that we have vetted that can give them the right advice, or their insurance carrier may also be able to give some recommendations. But that's really important. I was out visiting a home where the art had been packed up for, the plan was to eventually move it, and it had been professionally packed, but it was sitting on the floor and of a home. And when we brought in a specialist, they recommended raising the art up off the floor. Very simple thing, but in the event that you had some kind of a water intrusion or something like that, that could prevent a large loss. So having professionals to work with in that area is really important.
Where an ounce of prevention is really worth a pound of cure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, some of the simple things that it's not about money. It's just about respecting the conditions around you.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's clearly been a rough go for the property and casualty industry. Rising premiums, some companies pulling out of areas, and natural disasters at all-time high. I read a statistic that from 1980 to about 2021, $1 billion plus damages happened 9 times, and that, just in the last decade, it's gone up 24 times, which has investment implications and all kinds of implications. But, how are you guys dealing with this? Because it's not easy to be in the business right now.
So when the insurance environment started to change, we were on it. We could see it. We knew as companies were pulling out, we saw that coming. We have spent a lot of our time and energy educating our clients because we feel like that education is so important. We give a lot of advice around risk management and resiliency and building that into a client's home. Great examples of some of the things that we've coached our clients to consider are really not expensive, but they help to make the property safer. Things like replacing wood mulch that's over close to a home with rocks or decomposed granite or something like that, so that you reduce the opportunity for embers to catch fire and get to the home. We advise clients that have certain types of trees, and typically that's going to be like pine trees. In California, you see a lot of eucalyptus and other trees that tend to produce a lot of oils, and things are very flammable. So we coach our clients on how to build a defensible space around their homes, the homes that are in wildfire areas, because it just makes the home safer, and it keeps the home from being as heavily damaged in the event of a wildfire. Same thing in Florida. And other coastal areas, we're coaching our clients to make sure that they've got hurricane proof glass throughout the homes, not just 1 or 2 windows, but all the openings. Because if all your openings are not secured and there's a storm, you can have a problem with pressure, that it's got to come out some way. So we really look to make education kind of the platform for our clients, because once they make their properties safer and more secure, then they're really in control of their risk profile, and then they can make better decisions on insurance. They can be comfortable carrying higher deductibles, taking a little bit more of the risk themselves, and saving premium dollars, which we know all of us would like to do.
Sure, and a lot of it is common sense, but unless you get some guidance, and I would say the risk symposium you did in Los Angeles about climate literacy is one of the best educational programs I've ever attended. It really made me look at things a different way and recognize that as a community we can do more. It doesn't take a lot more money. It really just takes an awareness.
Yes.
And you guys are really good about that.
Thank you.
It's a corporate responsibility, and you wear it well.
Thank you. And it's not all about the insurance. It's also about the personal safety of the properties. Right. And I think that that's a piece that sometimes clients don't think about. But, right. We want our clients to be safe, and we want their properties to be
safe
protected.
And to protect heirloom properties. Mm-hmm. I know with some of the storage, some people are running hairy-carry at the last moment trying to find storage. Mm-hmm. You've got to do those things and have a place in advance.
Oh, yes.
So planning just becomes so important there too.
It does. And when you were talking about artwork for our clients that have substantial collections, planning in advance for whether it's, hurricanes or potential for wildfire, planning in advance and having a good action plan for how to get those items transported, crated, transported, and stored is invaluable, because the last thing you want to do is be trying to find vendors to help you out while the fire's burning or the wind is blowing.
And if you've taken a lifetime to accumulate some of these family possessions, it's not about just leaving the house quickly.
Right.
It's about protecting that which is you leave behind you. So that was a real education from some of the people that were specialists in art. And you have so many specialists because of the different types of coverages. How do you staff up for the immense services that you guys provide and the counsel that you give your insured?
Well, I'll tell you that like many other employers, we are always looking for great talent. We're always looking for great talent. Our senior leadership had the vision to bring in risk advisory leaders, and that was a new addition for my part of the organization, and their contributions have been enormous. They've gone out and visited with clients at their property. They've introduced them to vendors that could help them with materials, with plans for improving the resiliency of a property. We've helped clients secure the equipment that's necessary to build out their own fire protection. We've been able to really expand the level of consultative advice that we provide, because we had the foresight to make sure we had the right people on board.
And it takes a lot of areas of specialization in the artwork and doing the valuations and so forth. So it's really a pretty complex team to staff up, isn't it?
It is. And I'll tell you, in the insurance industry, we are always looking for talent. Our industry is one that, and we're not the only one out there. We've got people that have been in the business for a very long time, and we're always excited when we can bring in new talent. There's a lot that you can do in the insurance business besides just talk to people about insurance.
Yeah, I think some people think that it's just about premiums, but as I've learned about all the services you offer, there's talent in artwork and art history, and talent in jewelry, and so many very exciting areas that aren't often associated with insurance and insurance premiums.
That's true. We even have a meteorologist on staff. We
Wow.
have people that have a passion for things like collector vehicles. So we have a center of excellence built around that. So I would say that, that if you have a passion around those types of things, I think insurance makes a really nice career.
Carol, when you come into a family situation and you're looking at coverage, what are some of the gaps or some of the problems that you see?
Well, I'll tell you, first thing I want to mention is flood insurance. I recently saw a stat that 94% of homeowners do not carry flood insurance.
Wow.
And I think a lot of people are not aware that homeowners policy doesn't provide flood coverage. There are a few specialty policies out there that might have a little, but for the most part, a separate flood policy is necessary, and usually a separate policy on every structure is necessary. So, when we're working with new clients, new families, that's something that we look at, we talk about. FEMA has shared the stat that 40% of all losses, flood-related losses, are for properties that are in low-risk areas. So they're not the properties that are coastal, they're not the properties that are in the 100-year floodplain. They're properties that most people would say, well, I don't need flood insurance to get my mortgage. And I would say for anyone in the Houston area, I think, Harvey hit home. There were places that flooded that had never flooded before. So I think flood insurance is an area.
That's an astounding stat.
It is, and it's so concerning.
And avoidable.
And avoidable, absolutely. And I think, to me, one of the things I always look for is liability gaps. Liability claims, if there's a lawsuit, if there's a bad accident, those things can happen, and there's not a cap on there. It's not like you've lost a piece of jewelry that's valued at $3,000, and that as much as it hurts, it's $3,000. These can be...
It's unlimited.
Unlimited. And it's not unusual these days to see liability losses go into the millions. So I think the most concerning for me are liability gaps.
Are there rule of thumbs with regard to liability coverage, either in terms of income or net worth? Because people look at it as, well, $1 million's enough for everything and anything. When we both know there are unlimited liabilities out there. And it's relatively inexpensive for the amount of coverage you can get. So if our audience is listening in terms of what amount should they consider, or is there any way for them to gauge that?
Yeah, so I'll say that, a good rule of thumb on, what ultimate limit of liability coverage do I need is to look at your financial assets. In a perfect world, we would all carry enough liability coverage to protect those assets. For some people, that may or may not be feasible, but that's a great place to start. I would also say that, when you look at liability insurance limits on cars, on boats, on homes, if you're also carrying a personal umbrella policy, and that's a policy that provides liability limits of $1 million and higher, it sits on top of the liability limits on home, auto, boat. The limits on the home, auto, boat need to be at a certain level to avoid a gap in coverage between the primary layer and the umbrella layer. And a good broker can give a client the right advice to make sure that they don't have those kinds of gaps. I have seen people before. I consulted on a loss many years ago when someone had an excess liability, an umbrella policy. He bought a boat, decided to insure it online, and the liability limit he purchased was not enough. So when there was a fatality accident at the lake, he was responsible for about a $200,000 gap between his primary policy and his umbrella. Things like that are so frustrating to me because
unexpected and large.
They're so solvable, but you often need a professional to take a look at that and give you advice.
Now, sometimes people think that if a family is successful or an executive successful, they're going to know all this and they'll be insured and have no risk. What's been your experience working with clients?
Well, I'm going to tell you, if you need heart surgery, do not call me. That's not my area of expertise. And I would say that for other professionals, most of us are very familiar with our profession, and not so much as those outside of our profession. So, I leave I leave the cardiology to the professionals, but the insurance piece, I think that for me, that's my area of expertise and our team's area of expertise. So I would say you want to go to the professional. You want to go to a professional and have them take a look at it. And I'm sure there are people that are really good at their own profession and also, very astute at risk management, but it never hurts to have a conversation and just make sure.
Well, and sometimes they're so busy doing what they're doing
Yes.
that they may be assuming risks they're not even aware of.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have seen that many times. I see clients sometimes, who have purchased homes in multiple states, and I can tell looking at the insurance program that they were in a hurry to purchase insurance. So now they've got multiple brokers, they've got multiple carriers, and that's a lot to manage. And when you have that situation, you don't have one professional overseeing your entire program. So if you make a change over here, it can have repercussions across your entire insurance program. So I am very much a fan of having a single broker who oversees the entire program and can provide you with very proactive and consultative advice so that you can make decisions about your insurance program and have the program in place before the loss.
So what you do is a consolidated, kind of holistic approach to the fact that they have properties that might be multi-state, even cross-border,
Yes.
and make sure that there aren't any gaps
Yes. Yes.
there. Yeah, that's great service, because sometimes they're just running so fast and hard, they just don't get around to it.
Oh, yeah.
And
Oh,
we
yeah.
know-
And, I totally get that. That's why I go to the dentist. That's why other professionals could really use a broker who can give them that professional advice and assistance.
I mean, what you've proven is that you guys really embrace education.
Yes.
Whether it's been climate literacy, succession planning, and working with family offices to continue the legacies of families has become very important. Can you tell us a little bit about the work that you're doing there?
Oh, sure. Sure. So one of the things that we offer to our families is bespoke education. So we'll meet with a family that might, for example, want to educate the up and coming generation on all things insurance. Why should they carry, a personal umbrella liability policy? Why, what does renters and homeowners insurance cover? Those kinds of insurance 101s. So, we'll talk with them to kind of find out what media would they like to use for that. Do they want like an in-person meeting? Do they want us to we've built videos before.
You've built
done
family
apps.
retreats.
We've contributed on the family retreats. We we really want to meet
With
our families
outside
at their need.
experts and so forth.
We do that. We've talked with, we've had a couple of families that really wanted to educate the young drivers on the importance of avoiding distracted driving. I mean,
Interesting.
it is. And so whatever topic is important to the family, we'll build out whether they want a presentation to deliver at a family retreat or a family meeting, or they want us to meet directly with the family or with their family office staff.
So customized financial literacy. And
Yes.
even when you think about insurance policies and how it affects heirs and spouses and everyone, it is a family affair, isn't it?
It is. It
Yeah.
is. It is. And it kind of goes back to, reviewing insurance and having all of those discussions to make sure that, as the family grows, as the family begins to make decisions about ownership of properties and things like that, it's so important to continue to have those conversations because
And what to insure and how much to insure. Some people with rising premiums, have talk about the next generation. I'll hear the next generation say, "Oh, just don't pay it." go bear. And I think we all recognize that that's probably not a jump to solution. I mean, it might be that something doesn't warrant this a certain kind of coverage, but at least to have those conversations so that everybody understands the outcome.
Right. And I'll tell you, when it comes to, avoiding large insurance premiums and making the decision whether to self-insure, it's not always an all or nothing. A lot of our clients
Okay.
will choose to do things like carry very large deductibles because they can financially feel comfortable
absorb that.
doing that. We have some that will choose to self-insure for certain perils. So, for example, a client with a coastal home may decide that they're going to self-insure for their peril of wind. And for our families, we can work with our global analytics team to determine what the risk is for each of their homes so that they can make those decisions with full information, and be aware of what a loss to their home might look like, so that they can then plan, how much insurance do I need to carry, and if I think I can absorb that risk, I'll take a much larger deductible, or I may choose to self-insure for that peril.
But they get the education regarding how to customize a program that fits their needs.
They do, absolutely.
That's incredible. You had the climate literacy program in Houston in November. There's an upcoming program entitled Family Matters. Can you speak to what the inspiration was for that educational program and a little bit about what we can expect from the keynote?
I'd be glad to. So for us, families are a passion. We work with families of all sizes. We work with families that have formal family office structures. We work with other families that may not have a formal structure, but they like to work together and purchase together as a unit. And because we love families, we love education around families and matters and concerns on topics that impact families. We have our keynote speaker is Dr. Jeremy Lurie. And Dr. Lurie has a background in a business background. He also has acted as an executive coach, and he works with families on issues around their businesses, but also their interpersonal relationships. And I've had the opportunity to hear him speak many times, and I love the balance that he brings to families in terms of making decisions about the business, but balancing that and keeping strong relationships so that the individual members of the family are successful not only on business but in life. And I love that. I think that brings value to the audience, whether you're part of a family office or not. Those things matter, and I think I know we're in for a treat.
Well, yes, we are in for a treat, and family dynamics go way beyond money. And my understanding is, Dr. Lurie has a great sense of that, and that he can talk about those dynamics and things that go way beyond money.
Absolutely.
So I think that's going to be an exciting course
Definitely.
for people to attend.
Definitely. Every time I've heard him speak, I walk away with what I like to call a pearl of wisdom or a nugget of truth or something, a new way to think about things. So I cannot wait.
Yeah, it's interesting because two families with identical estates will have totally different values and visions for the future, and the more aligned they can be, the better. And he seems to have a great understanding
Yes.
of that and how to coach families in that regard. I think people who attend will have a major takeaway
I think so
for their
too.
own family. They'll get one or two kernels, I really believe. As a really successful woman, you probably could tell, you could tell your younger self something that might make it easier for the future. As you look at young women and even young people in the industry that you're in, what advice would you give your younger self?
Well, I was very fortunate because I grew up with a mother who never told me I couldn't do something. No, she wouldn't allow me to do a few things, I will say that. But she never said you can't do that. She always said you could do that. And then she would encourage me to think bigger. So I still remember as a kid coming up and telling her, I'm trying to decide what I want to do when I grow up. I might be a teacher. And she said, you could do that. You would be a great teacher. And she said, you could also be the principal. And
Interesting.
I said, my friends are talking about being nurses, and I might be a nurse. And she said, you can do that. And she said, nurses are so important. She said, but if you want to be a doctor, you could do that too. And so I have to say, I was so fortunate to have that advice. But, as a kid, I don't know that I realized how valuable that was, but it certainly has stuck with me all of these years. And I would tell anyone in business that, take the risks that you're comfortable with. If you're not comfortable with it, that's another story. But if there's something that excites you, you have a passion, take the risk. I spoke up a couple of times in my career and said, hey, I think we need to be doing better at this, and I would really like the opportunity to lead that.
So speaking up and having a voice,
Yes.
in addition to, don't be self-limiting in terms of your goals or objectives. And it's timely because I think a lot of us were raised in an environment where women, moms between the 50s and 70s, were either teachers or nurses. You hit it on the head. I mean, and that was kind of the limit that women set for
Back
themselves.
then it was, right.
And now it's a brave new world, and young women need to know, and young men, that they need to have a voice. And, maybe you err a little bit this way or that when you first start, but if you don't have a voice and you keep that inside you, you never really grow as much as you would otherwise.
I agree with that. And I'll tell you, for me, a lot of the knowledge that I've built in my profession has come because I made a mistake or someone on my team made a mistake and we had to figure out how to fix it. And I think that, you don't want to be afraid of making the mistake. You want to work hard not to. But if there's a mistake, there is so much value in taking that moment where you are and learning and figuring out how to get beyond it, how to recover, and then that will stick with you. You won't make that mistake again.
That's great advice. I think some people, and women maybe more so, are always striving for perfection. And whatever perfection is, that bar is going to move. And if you're not taking some risk along the way, you're not going to get there.
That's true. That's very true.
So, what about a favorite book? Something that you would pass along as a book that you think might be great for our audience to read?
Well, I'll tell you, I belong to a book club, and what I love about a book club is other people are choosing books that I have agreed to read, and they may be outside of my comfort zone, but it forces me to read things I wouldn't ordinarily. So I'm a big believer in book clubs, and plus honestly it's a nice opportunity to get together with friends and maybe have a glass of wine, so
and converse over that.
converse.
Yeah.
But I will tell you, I'm leading a book club for the managers that report to me, and the book that
so it's internal.
It's internal.
That's a nice idea.
It's internal.
Okay.
And the book that we're studying this year is called "The First Person You Must Lead Is Yourself 24/7." It was written by Becky Halstead, and Becky was the first female graduate of West Point to be promoted to the rank of general. She was also the first female in the United States to lead a combat organization. I had the opportunity to meet her when I attended a leadership training course at West Point, and I found her to be humble, to be very open about the decisions she made that were the right ones, and the decisions that she made that were the wrong ones, and why.
We really learn from both, don't we?
We learn
and
from
more
both.
From mistakes, really.
Yes,
And
and
the things
one
we
of the
do
things
right.
I love about her take on leadership, she says in the very beginning that this is about leading you. So as you read through the principles in her book, it's not about, oh, so-and-so could really learn from this. You really have to say, you know what, this isn't about the other person. This is about me. And this is about me learning to lead myself in a way that benefits not only me, but benefits the teams and the people around me.
And it's so much easier to look to other people and try to fix them.
It is.
But if we don't say, it's me, and if not now, when?
Exactly.
So, yeah, that is a great piece of
Yeah.
advice. Well, it's really been wonderful chatting with you, learning a bit more about Marsh McLennan and the services the private client services group offers. I'm really looking forward to working together with Dr. Jeremy Lurie in November. And thank you for sharing so much of your time and talent today.
Thank you so much for this great conversation.
My pleasure.